Hello, 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 and welcome to the MudBox. I'm your host, Pavi, and I'm here with Trey. Apologies for the late start,
I know.
everyone. How are you doing today, Trey?
I'm doing fantastic. I can't complain. I will say that it has been a little weird day, but it's okay. It's
Of
fine.
course, of course. Yeah. So let's just get right
Let's
to
get
it.
straight to it. I'm so excited.
I
We've been
am
meaning to have this conversation forever.
We have, me and Trey, if let's talk about what is blackness. So I just want to start off with, have anybody ever been questioned? Have you been questioned about the way you look? Do people stop you on the street and ask you where you come from? I mean, have anybody ever been told you aren't who you are because you don't look a certain way? So today we want to discuss what is blackness and who defines it. And we're also going to dive into interracial relationship. Is it a small form of self-hate? Now, I want to talk about my experience now. I have never been questioned about my blackness. No one's ever told me, no, you're not black. No one's ever asked me or questioned, are you black? Until actually I became older. Now, I don't know if we have it up, but if you would not know, but looking at me, my dad is Hispanic and my mom is black. So I'm Jamaican and Puerto Rican. Now, all my younger life, I've told people I'm Puerto Rican and Jamaican, but all my younger life, I've always been told, no, you're not. Why? Because I'm black. But one thing I will say, I've never been questioned about my blackness. Now, that is not the case with my friend Trey here. Trey, would you like to discuss your experience with your blackness?
Yeah, I mean, you can even get it to like when it's with your family and they call you yellow, and they're like, you know what I'm saying, yellow boy, you like light skin, red kid, you know what I'm saying? And that's typical in any black family. If someone's lighter, that's what, that's what they call you. Or I went to an all white school growing up, and the white kids, even though my dad was of lighter complexion, um, they didn't look at me as I was mixed. They looked at me as a black person. And then with black people, they were like, you're mixed. You're not black. And it's even more so now. I think figuring out who you are now is such much more of a bigger thing than when it was back then.
Right.
Because it was a lot simpler, but a lot more people are being a little like with the Me Too movement, different movements going out, that people are starting to be more involved with self. And so now people are being more, um, I would say, protective of who they are and of self, and don't want people to tell them what it is and what it ain't. People are gatekeepers. We got gatekeepers of blackness. We got gatekeepers of certain things, and people want to be the gatekeepers and tell people what you are and what you're not, and you're invited to this party and you're not invited to this party. And there are times where people are like, "Nah, bro, you're black," and there are times people are like, "You are biracial. You're biracial. You don't get it. You don't understand." Right. I'm like, all right, because that's not a winning battle. That's where you got to agree, disagree. So that's from my side.
I think for me, when it comes to the blackness, I think it's become more of a popular thing now. Before, I would say before social media, before it's become, something popular, that people really didn't embrace their blackness. I will say, I hate to say this, not from my family. I will say my Hispanic family has never made me feel that I wasn't Hispanic. They never made me feel that I was different. They never made me feel the color of my skin was a problem. But I will say, growing up, a lot of Hispanic people made me feel that it was a problem to be black in that community. And I remember a coworker, like I'm still trying to forgive her to this day because I wanted to drag her in the street. She said to me in front of all the coworkers, I was like, yeah, my dad's Puerto Rican. Oh, you're not this because you don't speak Spanish. Oh, your hair. Oh, and she stopped herself before, you're not Hispanic because you're, and I said, no, go ahead and say it. Go ahead and effing say it, because I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to do everything in your power to tell me that my blackness restricts me from calling myself Hispanic. And I will say from that day, I really stopped telling people I was Hispanic because a lot of people in that community did not accept their Blackness back in that time, which wasn't really that long ago. It's just recently, I would say, that a lot of them have started to embrace their Blackness, talking about, well, we come in different colors. But when I was growing up, that was a bad thing. You don't tell people you're Black. You know how many Dominican people will tell you from here to next week, we know Black. I mean, Godfrey did a whole joke on it, say that you're not Black. So I have identity issues when it comes to identifying as being Hispanic, because y'all told me my whole life I'm not, because I'm Black. But I've embraced my Blackness. I love my Blackness. You can't tell me nothing about my Blackness. My Hispanic side, I'm still trying to embrace that. Again, my family has always been loving, but people outside of them have been the nastiest people ever in my freaking life when it comes to my identity and that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on that sentiment, because from the outside looking in, my family, like I said, my dad does look white, and my dad is biracial. So any other person can look at him and tell him he's white, and he knows that he is white, and he gets around white spaces, and he's able to educate certain people because he gets in spaces where other people can't get into. But on my dad's side of the family, if you see my dad's side of the family, there's so many shades of Black, brown, and everything there, that I grew up in a place where, like, my aunt is darker than my dad. So, and she married a Black man. So all my cousins, my dad's brother had a Black daughter. My cousins on my aunt's kids are Black. So I got around both sides. Like, I'm looking at it like, well, my cousins are Black over here, my cousins are Black over here. Like, I lived a very, for me, Black life. My dad was a Sigma, mom was an AKA. I lived, for me, that's what I know. Like, and so when people try to tell me what I don't know, where I can't live, and how I don't understand, I'm like, no, I understand. My cousin is a huge activist for Black people and women back in my city, and she's biracial.
Right.
But that's what I'm saying. There's people don't know where you come from, and they look at you and they assume, and they prejudge, and they want to be the gatekeepers. Now, people, like I said, people on the outside, you know, I've gotten to a point in my life now where I can't change your mind.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You're gonna think how you're gonna think, and if you want to be ignorant, go ahead. That's fine. I understand the statistics between dark skin and light skin, this, down, and forth, everything. I'm not denying those. Those are very real and they're very true. But don't tell someone what their life is when you haven't put on my shoes and stepped out the door and walked my life. Right. So I definitely get you. Like, family, you know, solid. People on the outside, nasty.
They are very, and I mean, they've been very, very racist and nasty toward me. So like, to the point when they ask me, now it's weird because now they ask me, what are you? I'm Black. Yeah. Well, what else are you know anything else? No, just straight mixed with black dirt, blackest thing you can ever think of. I'm Black.
Yeah. I do the same thing too. Unless people are really keen to really know. I'm like, and I'd be like, why do you want to really know? It's my business, but why do you really want to know? But for me, it's just like, I just like, I'm Black. Like, it's very simple. If a cop pulls me over, he's not asking me, you look like you got a little white in you. I'm gonna give you a little discounted ticket this time. I'm gonna let you slide. Like that. It just doesn't happen. Like, for me, I have dealt with police brutality. They have thrown pepper spray bombs at my face. I've been on the ground gunpoint. I've dealt with police brutality. I've been stopped many times. Right. So you can't look at someone and judge a certain thing and be like, well, because he's light skinned or because he's mixed, he's got privilege. Maybe I do got a little privilege. I'm not denying that, but they're not looking at me. Cops aren't looking at me. Judges aren't looking at me, and they're saying, we're going to sentence you to 10 years because you're just a little bit lighter. They're going to give me the same 20 years or for life that the next Black person has. They're going to look at my nose, my mouth, and everything else. They're going to look at my tattoos. They're going to look at me. It's my choice to have tattoos. They're going to look at me and say, you're Black. And I'm like, yeah.
So I want to, dive a little deeper talking about the Blackness. Now, recently we were on Twitter and we saw a post where a gentleman brought up is it a rapper? I don't know what it is, Mulatto.
Oh yeah, some dude brought Mulatto.
So he brought up Mulatto and he said, this is a whole white woman. And then the debate started where it said it
was a Black woman who brought this up.
It was a Black woman. Yes. He brought it up saying, she's not Black, she's a whole white woman. And other people's like, no, she's mixed. No, she's that. She's this, this, and that. So we're like, okay, so what is it? What is Blackness? I want to introduce now our special guest, Dr. Christina Duyan, has a PhD in psychology counseling, is a mental health therapist, and a race and cultural researcher. Hello, Dr. Duyan.
Smart.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So thank you for coming. So I'm just gonna go straight in it. What does it even mean to be Black?
Well,
what is Blackness?
Blackness is a social construct to some extent, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what is Black now is different from what Black was 100 years ago and 100 years before that. And in 100 years from now, it might look quite different than it is. But it's essentially an amalgamation of cultures deriving of African ancestry, right? But right now, we define Blackness as a specific type of African ancestry coming from the motherland and attributing out to different Caribbean cultures and landing in the Americas. But, you know, like your co-host was saying, some people are counted as Black and some people are not. Right now, it appears that if you look Black, you are Black. And that's kind of where we are landing in the United States. And unfortunately, Blackness is not something that's, you know, biologically defined. Like biologically, we're not different from anyone else. That's what I mean by like socially defined. It is what it is right now, and it'll change in the next couple of years.
Wow. Trey, did you have any?
No, I agree with her. I think that's very true. I mean, they already did a study, I think it was years ago, where people are being so mixed now that the color of eyes and the color of skin is going to look different. And at that point, what do you consider those people? You're just going to say racially ambiguous? Like, I wonder if we're going to get to a point where we start adding more than white, Black, Latino, white, Latino, Black on the
census paperwork.
Are they going to start saying, you know, mix, or are they going to start being even more detailed? Because right now,
brown face, this,
yeah,
that,
because
right.
people right now are so about self and what's on the inside. Like we're at a point where even people are deciding, I'm not a he, her, or I'm a that, I'm a them. And you have to get to we're getting to a point now where every self and people are starting to recognize who they are on the inside, where it's getting very detailed. And I wonder where that's going to be in a few years with how we start socially categorizing ourselves. I'm gonna be Black, but where we start socially categorizing ourselves in the future.
It's definitely going to shift, because if you think about other countries in the world, they're not as dichotomous as we are. There are many countries that have multiple terms, racial categories for themselves outside of Black and white. Brazil has a whole host of terms outside of Black and white to define yourself. So it's very possible we'll get there. I think the US is just deeply rooted in anti-Blackness and was founded on the genocide of Native people and prospered on the backs of Black people. And therefore, it's hard for us to separate from that. But every other country has found terms in between Black and white.
Right. So kind of brings me into our next question, talking about what do you define yourself as? Now, for me, anytime I go and fill out a census and stuff like that, what I apparently learned recently is that Trey would like to tell me that I'm biracial. I do not believe I'm biracial. When I pull my pants down, this room get dark as hell. Ain't nothing about me motherfucking biracial. Now, granted, I ain't saying nothing about biracial people. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. However, I would never put that down there. But maybe I'm going off the rim. My question is, with somebody who is mixed race like that, do you just singly define yourself as Black, or do you define yourself as biracial? Like for Trey, I would say you should say you're biracial, because that's what you are. But listen, I would never define myself as biracial.
Wait. Let me just say something real quick before she answers this question. I think we do that because I'm light skinned. If I was your complexion, we would never have this conversation. But because I'm light skinned, it's because I'm light skinned, it is I'm biracial. I gotta because with light skin, I gotta be something. Oh, you gotta be something. You can't just be just. You like the same complexion as Christina, so yeah. You can't just be Black. You gotta be something else. You Italian? You got a little French in you? Like, no, I'm Black. Yeah, I got some white, but I'm Black. Like, and so why try to, like, when you get like these questions with people on Twitter and getting these arguments with Twitter, and people love to say, you know, they talk about people of dark skin. I'm like, okay, well, I know dark skinned people are biracial. If you go up to them and tell them they're biracial and they're not Black, you look dumb. You're going to tell a person who's darker than me, who's biracial, that they're not Black. That sounds crazy, but you can do that to me because I'm light skinned. Because
I can. I'm
let's
going to
go.
admit, I can. But anyways, but I guess really the question is, if someone is biracial, is it wrong? Or even for me, is it wrong for me to just strictly identify as Black and nothing else?
No, I mean, that's what I'm saying. People are really caring about self. They're really looking at themselves, and they're deciding what they are for themselves. There are people who are your color who are saying, I'm biracial, and they're coming out as that way. Now, I thought what's funny is, and there was an image placed up earlier. Someone came up on me online on a Twitter debate and told me, because we got in a debate, that I was an ape and called me a monkey. Now, listen, it's funny. I'm just saying it's funny. It's when it's time to, when it's positivity and it's time for Black magic and Black power, it's time to disassociate myself, and I'm lighter. When it's time where I don't agree with something, or if I say something outlandish, I'm an ape. Oh, now I'm Black, and I'm an ape, and I'm a coon. Before I wasn't like that, because you was putting me out when it was positive. Now it's negative. I'm a coon, and I'm against my race. But you weren't including me before when it was positive stuff. So I need to know what is it? What makes, when it's positive, I'm out. When it's negative, I'm against people. You can't choose and pick when I can fit into a category. That don't make no sense.
But again, that's a question. If you could even answer all that mumbo jumbo, doctor, it's just I don't even know how to even ask the question now. It's like, is it wrong? Is it something? I don't even know. I don't know how to answer that, or even ask it in a way that it makes sense. I guess again, is it wrong for people to just strictly identify as one race when they knowingly are two different races?
I don't think it is appropriate to ever judge someone for how they identify themselves, right? You're allowed to identify yourself as you are. I mean, people might have opinions about it, but they'll probably have opinions about the way you dress, the way you say your name, what job you have. Like, people have opinions. There are racial opinions they have, or those tend to hurt us more because they're about our sense of self. It's not something we could take on and off. But in terms of whether you identify as Black or biracial, I think it's partly up to the individual. And so, what your co-host said, it's how people let you rock or not. Like, if you're of a lighter complexion, people are going to debate your racial group membership a lot more than if you're darker. And that's going to be a hard cross to bear, right? If you're like, I am Black, and people want to insist that there's more going on. And you could be light skinned, and America has generations of light skinned people who are not biracial. Like, their biracial identity or the whiteness in their ancestry goes back like 100 years. They just stayed light throughout the years, right? And are you going to fight them about acknowledging this whiteness in them? And if we're being really honest, almost no one of American ancestry, like if you are descendants of slaves in the United States, you have white in your bloodline. It's just not possible that you got away with not having any. Like, there was too much rape of slaves. There was too much of everything going on for there to be no whiteness in any of our bloodlines. It exists somewhere, but that's not what defines us, the existence of whiteness. What defines us is, I feel like you're really having a good time with my answer right now.
I be saying this all the time. I be saying this all the time. Okay, listen, I be trying to tell Black people all the time. Listen, there's no way, and because I know this because it goes back to even my family tree. My great grandfather is a biracial person who his mother was raped by a slave owner, and he married a dark-skinned woman. If you look at all my uncles, you would never know that my great grandpa was light-skinned, like lighter than me. You would never know. But people have this social construct that is just 100% Black. That's it. Now I understand it's years and years of ancestry, and Black people got back to mix with each other and this and before, but it's still a mixture. And that's why I always say this about African people. I love African people, love the culture and everything, but they love to put their definition of Blackness in Africa on our Blackness in America, and they're not the same. It's two different cultures. And so that's why I always look at the Black culture, the culture we built here in America, because we had to build our own culture. We have no history. And so we create our own history, we create who we are. So it really drives me insane that knowing that we're this racially ambiguous group of Black people who created 2020, we created the media, the clothes, the styles, and everything. And we still got this battle between each other. Like, why are we fighting each other when we created all this? That's my problem.
I will say, though, I don't think we should blame African Americans for the ways in which we have learned to internalize self-hate. Like that has been intentionally taught within us.
Right.
I mean, you have all of these years of slavery, followed by Black codes, followed by, Jim Crow. Like there are too many things in our history for us to come to this place now where we're all hunky-dory and everyone's really happy with where they land in the color spectrum. There's been a lot of intentional self-hate, and that is going to be internalized. Like internalized racism is a concept. When you think something's wrong with you because of your complexion, because of your hair, because of the lot you've been given in life, that internal hate, you have to externalize somewhere. You don't just like harbor it within you and then it festers and then disappears. As it festers within you, you externalize it elsewhere. You teach your children these messages. You make these comments to your friends and family members. Like, I know I've heard many comments from dark-skinned friends who say things like, oh, I'm not trying to be in the sun. And it's like, okay, let's think about like where we heard that. We'll laugh about it, we'll joke. But how many friends do you know that who intentionally stay out of the sun?
Yes.
And then that's passed on throughout generations. And when no one corrects it in conversation, we now have an agreed upon understanding that getting darker is something we should avoid.
Thanks.
Right? And that's going to show up in the way we police one another's racial group membership.
That you are absolutely
That's
right.
so crazy.
And it actually I will piggyback off of that into our next kind of topic. We were talking about self-hatred. Now, a topic came up recently this week where a friend of mine talked about how the top 50 athletes, both from football and basketball, was it basketball? Yes. Who their spouses were. It said 11 of them were single, 9 of them had Black spouses, and the rest had spouses who were non-Black. And again, we live in this culture now that I would say on social media, it's a beautiful thing to be pro-Black. People are talking about their pro-Blackness. People are talking about how they love their Blackness, they this and that. But some of these people talking this way have a spouse that isn't Black. So I wanted to ask, is interracial dating some form of self-hate? Because if all your people you date doesn't look like you, wouldn't I say that there's some type of internal problem you have with yourself? Now, I got chewed up and damn near choked out when I said yes. I think it's a possibility that, when you're dating outside your race, especially if the people that you've been dating in your line of dating does not look like you, there is some form of self-hate. Because how is it that you can sit down and look me in my face, talk bad about Black women, talk beautiful about yourself, and then come home with Becky?
I agree.
And then tell me, no, I love myself.
I agree with you.
Huh?
That's for men and women, right?
For men and women. Men and women.
Yeah.
Let me put that out there because I know a lot of Black men get that all the time. They'll jump down the door, Black men love that white girl, this and that. No, sisters, there's some of y'all out there who drinking that juice too, who sit up there and say this stuff about Black men and talk about you love yourself and then have William come pick you up. Now, so that is is it, doctor, please? Sorry, Christina. Can that be some form of self-hate by dating somebody if your dating pool is only a specific type of person?
So I'm going to say yes and no, because you can love yourself, love being Black, and fall in love with someone who is not Black, and still be making moves for your culture and it not mean anything about the way you feel about your Blackness. But some people who do have internalized racism feel within them there's something wrong with their Blackness, whether they're saying it overtly or not. So they feel this way. It can certainly externalize as dating predominantly non-Black partners as a way in which to lighten, the next generation, as a way to affirm their worth, or seeing it as a form of status. That if you've come to believe that whiteness comes with status and success and affirmation, and you obviously cannot become white. I mean, we're not MJ, right? Like we can't all
right.
So if you cannot become white, then some people see that being affirmed by a white person who loves you, who chooses to marry you, is an elevation in status. So there are instances where it certainly can be, but it is certainly not always the case. And I think that those who choose to date outside their race tend to be lumped in with people who are dating outside the race for the purposes of elevating their sense of self with regard to their Blackness. And it's definitely not one group, but both people do exist.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I just agree with everything she said. I mean, you know, it's crazy. I remember the night that you had that conversation, you called me and we talked about that conversation. And shoot, I wish I was there, real talk. Because I mean, I agree with everything you said. We even kind of piggybacked off that conversation today before the podcast.
Right.
And like I was telling you, I think that there are different scenarios that happen.
Right.
Like we're in the office and we happen to work with each other and I get to know you and I figure out, you know what I'm saying, the person you are, we like each other, and that happens naturally. It's another thing, like I'm scoping.
Right.
I'm out here looking. That's all I'm looking for. And that's a whole different story. That's a fetish and that's a different situation. Which at that point I'm like, all right, bro, like you got some issues. Like there's plenty of sisters out here. But it's a way different situation where you're in the office. Like we talked about even with my ex. Right. Like me and her dated for years, but one of my serious conversations with her is that you're going to have Black kids. And you got to understand when people see you with them, they're going to judge you. They're not going to look at them the same way they're going to look at other kids. They have to be taught different. They have to understand things different. They have to move different. So I feel like if you're going to be a person who's going to date someone in an interracial relationship as a Black man or as a Black woman, those conversations of your Blackness are important. You need to let them know.
That's so valid because
there's white women who do all the time. I just want to get a Black guy so I can get a light-skinned kid. And they want to have a light-skinned kid for what? Do you know how to do their hair? And those people who fetishize that, it's a fetish. It's different when it's those things are different when it's natural. Right. What we're talking about is natural and fetish. And when it's a fetish, and you're just talking about because you've seen it on Instagram, that's a problem for me. Right. What's up?
There was a video that came out of, this one girl might have been around.
So engineer, everybody, our engineer Kenny.
Yes, in the background. About 17 to 18. She probably between 17 and 20 years old, asking high school and college boys what's their preference, Black or white, and a lot of them said white women. And one of the guys said because white women are they listen more, they're not ghetto, and so these are things they're learning about, and then it took me, remember when we first met as well. Yeah. You told me your environment, you didn't know Black women.
I didn't.
That were
educated like that. Because the thing is, here's the thing, because I went to an all-white school.
Yeah, exactly. So
I went to all-white school. So when I first started dating girls, it was all white girls.
Right.
That's all I know. And I'm a product of someone who has self-hate. I'm a product of that. And I can accept that. And I can say that I grew from that. Because I was in the point where when I was going through high school, I was dating nothing but white girls. And to fit in, to feel like I had to fit in, to feel like I had to be like, I'm not like the other ones. I'm not like them. In front of the dads who are racist and this, that, and forth. Like I'm clean cut, I dress in Hollister. You know what I'm saying? I'm good. And then I get to college and I meet so many different people and I become educated. And that took me years. You know what I'm saying? From that point, I started to get smart, develop, learn, meet new people. And I would say from like 22 till now, my level of love for myself and for the Black woman and for the Black culture in general is at an all-time high. There's nothing you can tell me that could make me switch off from that. Right. I want to be me. I want to be Black. So I think that a lot of that is self-hatred. Right. Just a lot of people, especially Black men, not understanding that, like, you can't be demeaning women like our Black women like this. Like y'all tripping big time. And I'll let it be. I'm at the point now in my life where I'll let it be known, like face to face. We got to correct each other. It's not a situation where we can they say something and he's less like I'm at the point now where if you say some slick stuff, like, bro, no, you need to tighten up. That's wrong.
I think it's been, and also like, I definitely agree with you. I think some of it comes from self-hate. And even in that conversation when I called you, I also said that, like I said, 95% of those dudes who are dating women of other race are dating them because of a status or they want to achieve something. And I said, there is still that 5% who are really dating these women because they care for who they are.
Right.
And I know if I was somebody of a difference and I found out my man was dating me because I'm a status, I would feel some type of way. It's like, do you really love me?
That could be back and forth.
Yeah. Like, do you really love who I am? Do you really love what I can give to you? Like when I'm praying for you, I'm calling on God, calling you before God. Are you really loving me for that? Or are you loving me because I make you feel good about you? And also with that mindset, my children will be affected. Because one thing about, Black men and Black women, we are going to create Black. Like you said earlier, we are going to create Black. So when we have our children, we have a chance of them coming out lighter skin, but we have a huge chance of them coming out dark. Like me, I'm dark. You see my daddy's pale. And look at me. So now those ideas are now on my children. And now we've created a generational curse back and forth. And this just stems from slavery. It's coming down and we're continuing to pass on these ideas. So now I think now that we understand these are things that are happening, we in our Black community need to start breaking them down. And again, therapy is something I think we need to start making it.
Black people need to become psychologists so we can start talking to each other.
We do.
Yeah.
We need to start making sure that therapy is not a, what is the word? White people shit, which I saw that was on your Instagram, Christina, that they talk about that's a white people shit. Saying hiking is white people shit. Saying therapy is white people shit. Saying being gay, lesbian is white people shit. We have to break those ideas. We have to break this curse of Black on Black abuse, which is a whole nother topic we could talk about later. But definitely it is something that we need to do as Black people to break these ideas that have been put in our head to make us think that our Blackness is a problem and our Blackness is a fetish. That has to stop.
And I'm going to co-sign that in what Trey said a little earlier about, holding people accountable when they say these things in conversations. So if you're with your boys and they're admonishing Black women, if you're silent, you're co-signing what's happening, right? You're allowing this conversation to persist and you're saying that this is okay. The same way when your friends say, oh, I don't want to be in the sun or things like that. When we don't interject and say, okay, what's really going on here? We're saying that we co-sign these statements and beliefs. And we need to be disrupting those things so that if someone goes to therapy, that'll even be effective. Because if everyone around you is co-signing all of these negative thoughts about yourself and your racial group, it'll take a lot of work for that therapist to convince you otherwise.
Right. Absolutely. Because I'm shoot.
Well, when you talk, like I told you, like being light skinned, I didn't want to be light skinned. I told you I looked at dark skinned dudes and you know what I'm saying, I saw them in the movies and you watch Usher, you see everyone growing up and you like this is what they like. They don't like me. Right. So I used to be happy when I used to go out tan in the sun. I used to be like, I'm about to get dark. I used to be so happy. I'm like, I'm about to get a tan. I'm about to go hoop outside for like 2-3 hours. Right. I'm about to be brown.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
And then there's the guys who want to be like you.
It's crazy, yeah.
And I wouldn't necessarily that I wanted to be light skinned, but the only thing I ever wanted was to look like I had some Hispanic so no one would question me. But now, fuck that. I love being dark. Like, put me in the sun all day, baby. Like, I love what God made me. Like, I am who I am. I look just like my mommy, beautiful brown skin. So
beautiful.
She is. Hey, mommy. I mean, this was a good conversation. I'm glad that we actually talked about this again.
I have a question for you guys, though. All right. Assuming you guys go to therapy, right?
I do go there. I will say therapy is very important. Ladies and gentlemen who are watching, please, please, please. If you can't find someone, a friend, a family member, please find someone in your area to talk to. It is very important to get yourself someone to talk to. Holding those things in, holding them in your head, you don't want to do that. You got to let it out. You have to talk to someone. Go ahead, Kim. Sorry. Took over.
You made me lost the question. So now when you go see a therapist, what is it that you're going to bring to him about this topic? So let's say you see him or her and you're saying, this is how I feel. What is it that you're feeling, that you want to get clarity, or what's the one question you would ask him or her?
Well, I mean, how do I come to terms with loving the fact that I'm something sometimes I feel like I don't want to be. I don't want to be mixed up. I don't want people questioning what I am. I hate it. sometimes I'm not saying I hate myself, but I really am saying I hate myself. I hate having to constantly be told, what are you? Why do you have a last name? Why is it like this? It's just like, oh my God, it's annoying. I wish my last name was Johnson, so I don't have to constantly have people saying
Williams.
Something, so that I don't have people constantly questioning what I am.
Right.
No, as a therapist, I don't know exactly how my therapist would answer that, but
I mean, for me, it'd be like, why? Mm-hmm. I feel like it's a lot deeper than just I hate myself. Mm-hmm. And I feel like Black people, we need to know the history of us and understand our history first, because there's so much hate, there's so much self-hate between all of us, even to the colorism part, right, that we need to understand from the beginning that all of us suffered. And now we have to see all of us as one, and stop. We need to see that first. Mm-hmm. We're all one, we're all Black, we're all the same. Mm-hmm. And then move forward from that. I think it's a history lesson that we don't get growing up, because I'm saying they when we go through school, we don't know nothing about us. We get to slavery, then we move straight to Martin Luther King Jr. Mm-hmm. They give a little bit paragraph of Malcolm X, about Malcolm X, and then that's it. We're in 2020, and I think it's going to people who know our history, who know everything, to give us that type of talk, so we can understand the full spectrum. So the next time I see another Black person on the street, or another brother, or another sister, I'm like, we're the same. And I love you because what you went through, what your people went through, my people went through. And that's where it needs to stem from first, the history part.
Right. And
so that's where it was for me. Mm-hmm. For me, I had to sit back and look back at everything as a spectrum, mm-hmm, and see that you're not different from me. Right. And I'm not different from you. And I love you, so love me. Like, let's stop all this extra stuff.
Right. So
I'll push a little bit on that thought if I can.
Yes, yes.
In that we're all kind of like the same. So I think this is often where issues of colorism come in social class, mm-hmm, amongst Black people, and sometimes cultural background if you're not African American and living in the United States, that our differences don't have to be the things that take us apart, right? Because mm-hmm, within even the four of us in this conversation have a different walk in life based on our complexion, our hair, our socioeconomic background, our educational background. Mm-hmm. And these things do make life different for us. And in some cases, it can make it categorically different. I know a little earlier you had talked about, you'll get the same 20 years as the next Black guy, but actually you won't. Studies have shown that lighter skinned Black people do get lighter sentences. So like, we do have different lots in life, but those don't have to be reasons to divide us, because we didn't create the system that's oppressing us that's oppressing us differently or altogether. So that shouldn't be a reason to divide us. But we do have differences that do change the way we interact with the world and the way the world interacts with us.
Mm. Absolutely, absolutely. So we have gone over time. But I want to leave, Christina, you some opportunity to talk to the audience. What is something that you would like to leave our audience with today?
One, thank you all for having me. And in terms of audience, check in with yourself and check in with what is motivating you in the way you identify yourself, in the people you choose to date, in the way that you move through the world. If you're making the same decisions or the same patterns of decisions or behaviors repeatedly, kind of check in as to why. Are you trying to prove something to someone? Are you getting into arguments about how you identify? And what is the source of that? Is it because someone is genuinely making you question who you thought you were? Or because you really need to get it right? Does it actually matter what this person thinks of you? So really check in with yourself. Like, what's your motivations? What's fueling you? And how do you feel about who you are? And in terms of therapy is amazing. Definitely go. If you want to talk about issues of race and culture, which I think are pertinent to any and everyone, regardless of race or culture, mm-hmm, I think it's really important to have a culturally competent clinician. This means when you meet your clinician, this can be a licensed clinical social worker, it can be a psychologist, whomever. Like, when you meet someone who does therapy, ask them, what are their views on race and culture? How do they feel talking about these issues? And how will they help you kind of talk about them in general? And there is no perfect right answer. It's more, does the answer work for you or does it not work for you? If they say something that you're like, I don't like that, then that's not the person for you, right? Keep shopping. But it's important that you're speaking to someone who is going to help you explore these issues in a way that grows you, not in a way that affirms the current zeitgeist, that confirms racial stereotypes. That's like, of course you want to be light skinned. You don't want to talk to that person. So that's kind of my last thing, interview your therapist.
Thank you so much. And could you give us your contact information if somebody decides that they want to get some help? Is that someone, again, tongue-tied right now, how can they reach out to you to get help or any of that sort?
I'm not the best resource for help. I work in the VA system, so I currently can only see veterans. But on my Instagram, so I'm at Christina.Marie.Duyan. Hopefully it'll be written somewhere because not that it's on me. If you look on my Instagram, I think I have like a story that has a list of resources. But one that's quickly to take away is Therapy for Black Girls has a really extensive list. And it's not just for Black girls, but a really extensive list of culturally competent clinicians. I think that's a great first place to start.
Right. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you everyone who is watching. Again, thank you so much for tuning into the MudBox. If you are here local in Orlando, don't forget you can rent out the MudBox room to host your own podcast. And if you need help, we're here to help you. Please contact us at MudBox Entertainment on Instagram and MudBox Studios on Facebook. You can call us, tweet us, text us, all that. Well, you can't tweet us, but eventually you will. But you can WhatsApp us and get in contact with us, and we will help you get your podcast started. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good night. And remember, stay clean, but think dirty. Have a good night.